This episode of Beer with Nat is brought to you by me. Hey everyone, Nat here. I don't normally run ads on the podcast, but this season I've got my own shameless plug. I wrote a book. Available on March 19th in the UK and April 28th in the US, Beer, Taste the Evolution in 50 Styles is a taster's guide through the history of beer. To learn more and pre-order your copy, visit beerwithnat.com/book. Okay, time for the show. Welcome back to Beer with Nat. On every episode, I share a beer and a chat with people who do what they love for a living. They work in the beer industry. Today's guest is Cara Simpson, sensory trainer at Cara Technologies. Cara talks us through what it means to be a sensory trainer and what her day-to-day looks like in the role. We also discuss why she and the business she works for share a name, what it was like to spend 6 weeks on a brewing internship in North Carolina, and of course, what she enjoys most about being a part of the beer industry. Here she is.
So I brought a beer called the Big O. It's a IPA from Sugar Creek in North Carolina.
And why is that
The reason I brought this beer is because I spent a couple months this summer brewing out there. It was a bit of like a brewing sabbatical.
That is one beautiful looking beer.
It looks great, doesn't it? I mean, I was a bit worried about how it held up because it has kind of sat, I will say sorry in advance, in my room in a bit of the heat wave.
Sorry, I've got
and then
that
half
as well.
in the fridge. But I had a couple yesterday and it was still fine. So I was like, okay, this is actually still decent. So I'm actually quite surprised how it's held up. But yeah, it's around 7.5%.
Okay.
Trying to think what else to say about it.
Oh, the orange just pops right out
It
of
really
the glass.
does. I mean, like the clue's in the name. So it's like the big blood orange IPA, but the Big O for short.
And how is the blood orange added in?
So we add it in transfer to the bright tank. So yeah, it's like...
So it doesn't hit any high temperatures?
No.
Orange.
Yeah,
so
it's in
just all this lovely fresh
cold.
flavor.
Yeah, exactly.
Would it lose its flavor if you heated the orange?
I know they kind of messed around with it in the past, adding it like in fermentation, adding it earlier and stuff like that, and then found like later add it after dry hopping and stuff like that. It turned out really well.
Yeah, this is lovely. Because blood orange is that slight different citrus
I always
flavor.
think it's dangerously drinkable.
Yeah, like almost savory is not the right word, but there's definitely something different about blood orange flavor. But it works so nicely with the hops in here too.
I think it works well. I think it's good.
And that is a bit dangerous at 7.5%.
Yeah.
Which is just the standard in America.
It
for
really
an IPA.
is.
And here the standard is significantly lower, so I think a lot of people go over
Sessions just don't really like fly that much in America. It depends where you are, but like the standard IPA is 7 to 8%, whereas here people will be like, can I have it a bit lower? Like I know a couple breweries that we work with that have gone out there and tried to sell like their IPAs that are 5.5% and struggled because they're so low.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that different expectation almost that's set for the industry. So we're going to come back to your brewing internship. Yeah, we'll talk more about Sugar Creek a bit later on, but we'll talk about your day-to-day first. So you are a sensory trainer, among other things, at Cara Technology, and it's definitely not a coincidence that you and the business share a name, but we'll get back to that bit. So what does a sensory trainer do? What does your day-to-day look like?
Really, my day-to-day is very different. I mean, as you know, but other people might not know, I travel a lot for work, so that keeps me pretty busy. But essentially, my day-to-day job is I help brewery panels and food and beverage, but mostly breweries around the world, basically train their taste panels and kind of assist them with any kind of quality needs that they have or any issues and stuff like that. So that would involve maybe going out and running a training course for them on beer flavour, quality, whatever it may be, like quality management. And then day to day really varies, to be honest. It could be like dealing with people who are really like troubleshooting a problem. It could be the regular kind of stuff. I handle all the sales marketing of our flavour standards, which we use to train people. So that as well. But yeah, so it could vary from training to just selling.
To talking about the product
talking with people. So when I'm out, I try and tack on a few days a lot of times and visit like breweries and customers and see how they're doing. And you always get a lot more information when you're on the ground and you can talk to someone and try their beer. Exactly. I think people are a lot more relaxed when you do that as well. And
right. And
just give them some information.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I am familiar with the flavor standards,
Yeah.
having studied for beer sommelier and
Yeah.
certified Cicerone. We use them in those situations, but they're used in a variety of other situations, like you said, beer, wine, cider,
Yeah.
food. So what is a taste panel for people who aren't familiar, and why is it an important part of the food and beverage industry?
So essentially a taste panel is kind of like your last stop of that product leaving like the brewery or facility. It's essentially there to make sure that the product tastes as it's meant to, but also good. That you don't really want to send out anything bad, but it's also making sure that if you're intending to make Budweiser, Punk IPA, whatever it may be, that it tastes like that, meets the specification every single time, that you're not having something completely different. So essentially, it's helping people do that, and how we do that is most beers, so let's talk mostly about beer compared to food and beverage. Let's say a lager is made up between 15 to 20 flavour compounds. Most people think Bud would be like 3. But it's around like, you got to think, if I started with a glass of water, what would I have to add into there to make it taste like that?
Okay.
Yeah. And the same of an IPA, you could be talking between 40 to 50. So we train taste panels and breweries on those flavour compounds. So they could be either positive, so stuff like isoamyl acetate, it's the taste and smell of like banana foam sweets. It's an ester, it comes from yeast. Or it could be something like negative, so an off flavour, something you don't want there. Maybe you make an IPA and you don't want diacetyl, or you're getting like a papery or metallic flavour, then we train them on that as well. So a range of stuff. So both good things and bad things, and essentially helping people set up their taste panel with people from the brewery or outside, whatever that they may choose to do, and ensuring that those people can then decide whether that beer is defect free and as it's meant to, meets the specification, and is a good quality to send out into the market. Like a good representation. A good representation to customers, so that they know that that's what it's meant to taste like.
Yeah, and I do find it quite interesting with all of the technology available to us today. There are, of course, so many other things that you could test along the way. Yeah. Why is it that having a human trained to taste something is
even if you had the most sophisticated like GC, GCMS, GCO, or
I don't know what any of those things
the gas chromatograph. So basically, big kind of machines.
Fancy machines.
Fancy machines
that's in your
that
beer.
cost a fortune. Yeah. And the number of brewers I talk to who invest in that and then don't in sensory boggles my mind. But that's a whole other story. Yeah. But essentially, the difference is we can detect certain compounds at femtograms per litre is what we can go down to.
So super
really,
teeny.
really tiny.
Okay.
Like, imagine like a speck of a sugar on a teaspoon, like smaller than that.
Wow.
like we are very, very sensitive to a lot of different compounds out there, and you won't be able to teach a machine that, but also from the quality perspective, in a way of a machine can tell you whether it's there or not, but it's not saying whether it's. Then you've got kind of consumer preference. You've got all these other kind of lines as well that it goes down to.
The consumer's drinking it is a human,
not a machine.
So you want a human to make sure the beer
I
is
definitely think
okay.
there's some interaction. There's some stuff that in the future you could see a bit of both. I think the food industry is experimenting with that a little bit,
using AI and other technologies.
Yeah, exactly. The beer industry is nowhere near kind of using.
I think we like the opportunity to drink the beer and make sure it's
we haven't really got the budget that people like Nestle and McCain's and stuff like that have. I think that's
very
a
good
difference.
Point. And the scale as well. Yeah, that's a really good point. So you got started in a different role coming to Cara. Yeah. And well, I suppose you could talk about how you got to Cara in the first place as well, because it's a family business.
It is.
So what is the role that you started in, and then how did you work your way up to what you're doing today, which you still do both at this point?
Yeah, so the company's named after myself, the clue in the name. My dad always says that he couldn't be bothered to think of another name. He'd already named one thing. So when he started...
First baby, okay, second baby, we'll just have
I came first. That's the important thing. I wasn't named after the company. That would be a bit tragic. The company... Well, I was born and then my dad started the company and had invented stabilised flavour standards when he was at the Brewing Research Foundation, which sadly no longer exists. It was basically an institution where loads of beer science was done in the UK.
Here in the
So
UK.
yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
like
I
it's
didn't
where
realize it
like
was
Charlie
gone.
Bamford did his like foam stuff and everything. He used to be my
Research,
dad's boss. Yeah, and loads of stuff
What
like
a
that.
small beer world.
Yeah, it really is. So it's almost
nicknamed,
like
the Pope of Foam.
he
so
is,
this
exactly.
Is his expertise.
So it's kind of anyone who's still in the industry who's probably about 50, 60 plus, it's like they were either there or Bass.
Okay.
Like they're the two routes that they
Schools
came
that
down.
you went through, yeah.
But really, I kind of fell into the company, to be honest, by accident. I did politics at university, so completely different, but I guess that's most people in the beer industry these
I
days.
know that feeling as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And essentially, I went into politics for a bit, hated it, and realised that the pay was terrible. But I really liked like election campaigning.
Okay.
So I wanted to go and do marketing and PR and get experience, and then go back into it when I could be like, look, this is
Very
all the
smart.
experience I have.
Yep.
So the kind of end of the summer, when I realised this after graduating, I spoke to my dad and was like, would you mind if I did some kind of marketing for the company and just kind of got some experience? He was like, oh, funny you should say that. We're actually looking to hire someone
Oh, perfect.
to do marketing. Yeah, exactly. It's probably there thinking, oh, cheap labour. No, only kidding. But yeah, still, so started there and then, basically worked my way up. So started doing marketing, so handling all our conferences, kind of material around beer, training panels. I obviously knew a lot about the company growing up around
of
it.
course,
Yeah,
yeah.
like my whole life. But yeah, it was a bit of an eye-opener, and obviously was travelling with the colleagues we had at the time around to conferences, going to like CBC and Trends and Brewing and
It's the
beer
Craft Brewers
festivals.
Conference.
Yeah,
so
beer festivals
loads
and
of
stuff like
different
that.
ones.
And realised it was the beer that I liked, I think, more than the marketing side. I'd always loved beer and then kind of just continued to do that really. And then my role has kind of transitioned over the years, really. It wasn't like a straight switch as customer facing. And then we had a couple guys who had worked for us about 5 years who were from the States, who, as you might know, when you reach that time, you either have to decide whether you're going to stay here full time or whether you're going to leave, which is fair enough. So yeah, they sadly left us and have gone on to greener pastures new. But exactly, back home.
Often,
I mean, it's great
so
because like they're actually both technically really both my customers now as well, which is quite entertaining.
It grows your network as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they kind of left, I took over the customer facing bit as sales manager, brought on other people, and have gone from there.
And then how did you get your expertise then in the kits to be able to train other people?
So, I mean, in terms
Were
of
you just tortured as a child?
I mean,
to
you
identify all these
joke,
spices?
but my dad used to do it in Diet Coke when I was about 5. So.
And these, I mean, if you've never done any sensory training, some are quite interesting, the isoamyl acetate, but others, oh my goodness, are just horrible. The infection spike, for example.
Oh, I think he used to give me the nice things like isoamyl acetate, but teach me, I'd be like, ooh, banana.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So lots of practice as a kid.
Yeah, lots of practice as a kid, and then from the beginning that you're in the company, there's a lot of exposure to it anyway, and that's for pretty much everyone. So we have a lot of training for everyone that we have, and that's mainly because we do all the quality control for all our flavour sounds. Yeah, because we make them all in house.
Oh wow!
So
So you're creating a panel for your own business.
Yeah, exactly. So
which is a great first
we
application.
have people who come in that have, I think nearly everyone that we've had in the company has sat on the training course, apart from new people that haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of exposure anyway. So really, it's just been that, sitting on training courses my dad's run, colleagues have run, and then we try and build people up so then they can do it themselves and then facilitate a course. So it takes time. I mean, my dad always says it's like practicing for a marathon. Like, you can't go on one run and then say you're a sensory expert.
Yeah.
Like, you have to keep practicing. And I always say that doesn't mean just, like, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy 10 grand's worth of flavour standards. I mean, that would be great. But
you're who to speak to if someone
yeah,
wants to do
exactly.
it.
Practicing can be going into your local pub, like buying a beer and just thinking, what are the flavours that are in this? Like, that is literally keeping it up, if you know what I mean. It's doing stuff like that to stay on top of it.
Is it like a muscle, would you say?
Yeah,
like,
definitely. I think it
repeat
is.
exposure?
Yeah, I mean, we always say to people on training courses, we tell them to switch their brain off when they come in, which I don't think you hear on many training courses.
Yeah,
but
totally.
it's mainly because the sense of smell that we have, it's stored in your, essentially, like the unconscious bit of your brain.
Okay. So if we overthink things.
Yeah, exactly.
you'll
So
lose
when
it.
we find people think what they're smelling, they're usually getting it wrong. When we do a test bit, it's like the back of your head that kind of thinks, this, I know what this is.
Yeah.
So just kind of switch off and you know it. I would say 90% of these smells, you probably smell it in real life. Like in a banana, in a beer, walking down the street, whatever it may be. And if you can tie it to a memory, you'll remember it. Like, you'll never forget it. Like, we always try and say, tie it to something that you know. Like, it might sound stupid to someone else. We get people to use, like, a common attribute. So, for musty, it's musty TCA, the compound's trichloroanisole, but it's the ASBC term, basically. So, musty TCA. But we get, like, charity shop and stuff a lot, if you know what I mean.
Wow,
because most charity shops smell a bit musty. Yeah. So, but a lot of people say charity shop, but when you say that, you probably got one in mind. Yeah. If you know what I mean, you've got your Oxfam down the street that you walked in and have been in before.
Volunteer in one.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That smell,
so that's why I would say try and tie it to a memory or something you know.
Yeah.
And you won't forget it again.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? Because the goal is to get us all speaking the same language. Yeah. But it has to be personalized.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's making sure you're all saying the same thing, but you can all have different origins of how you remember
for it to twig.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some like compounds that encompass like 8 different flavors, like DMS being one, for example.
Oh, I didn't realize it was so complex.
So, it could, but it's because you find DMS in loads of different things. In real life, but so it might be more like sweet corn to you, but could be strawberry jam for me. Could be baked beans for someone else.
Throwing out all those words
exactly.
to
So it's like one will stick for someone, but not for something else. So it's what helps you remember it. Yeah, is always the better thing. Yeah.
And in addition to the trainings that you are receiving at work to then be able to be a good trainer, you also do a lot of judging for beer competitions.
Keeps you busy.
Yeah. How did you get into that? And are there other things that you do to help keep your skills sharp as a trainer?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how I got into it. It's always a difficult question when someone asks how you got into something. You have to try and think about it. I think my first proper big one that I ever did was 3 years ago in Brazil.
Well, that's a fun place
which is a good one to do.
Mine was a homebrew competition at the Birdcage. Way less glamorous than yours.
I know, which I was very lucky to be invited on. The year before, I'd been out there because we were setting up a distributor who runs a beer education school in Sao Paulo and has a good relationship with them, etc. And Amanda, who runs the competition, is actually like 3rd or 4th biggest in the world. Like, it's huge. It's
Mainly for the South American market, or it's
global
as well?
It's only Brazilian beers, but actually no, Brazil's giant.
Massive,
But they have a very good range of judges at that one. Like, they have like 150, 200 judges, and I think like 60% of those are international.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and most of them are like World Beer Cup judges and stuff like that, or
I know
are known in the industry.
They've set their sights on that, and
it's
my Olympics.
It's a very good one to judge. It's very good fun. So that was kind of the first one, and then I think it kind of snowballs from there. Like, I don't want to say the judging circuit is who you know, but it is a little bit in terms of you go to one, and then people will refer you for another one. Yep. But that doesn't mean people can't email someone and say, look, this is my experience. I'd love to.
Can I get into it?
Judging this. That I think that's definitely another way you can.
And does it help in that it's almost a real world
scenario?
100%,
definitely.
The
thing that always makes me laugh when I'm doing training courses is I sometimes present some samples of like diacetyl. So 1 capsule in a litre is 3 times the threshold, basically, that you would find on it. So it
should be really easy to pick up.
Yeah,
for most people.
Exactly. And when we do a 1-day course, depending on what it is, sometimes we might start at 2 capsules a litre, work our way down. We always say it's like limbo dancing, that it's like you wouldn't start.
How far?
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't start with the pole on the floor. You start with it high and work your way down. But then if you're on a 3-4 day course, you're going at really, really small levels. But it shouldn't necessarily feel harder. Okay. So we start quite high. Now, I've had some people go, and they'll pick it up and they'll go, oh my God, like, you'll never get this level in a beer. And it's like, okay, try and do judging.
Oh dear.
You definitely do. 100%. Yeah, I've had some ones that are literally like an off flavour class in a glass.
Oh my
which
goodness.
is incredible.
That someone has put out to sell.
It almost sounds a bit that I don't know whether those people realise it's in there. Or
they just didn't have a sensory panel to check it at the end.
Or maybe they do and they just think, oh, maybe someone won't notice.
Yeah.
We'll send it anyway.
Or,
I never know which one it is.
We need to sell this, so...
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. We can say we entered it or whatever.
Yeah. Well, if it's that bad, hopefully no one ever knows they entered
There's been some pretty terrible beers I think I've had in judging. Some amazing beers, though.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's so funny to think how broad the spectrum can be, good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, luckily with judging is anything like that gets knocked out in like the first round. Yeah. You never see it again.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, first round judging is always a little bit tough. Like you look forward to like the third day when you're like, okay, these should all be good.
They should be good by now. Yeah, true. And how did you get into beer in the first place? Had you always enjoyed drinking beer?
I think so, yeah. I mean, to be honest, because my dad's always been into beer, and my mum as well. I mean, my mum's the worst in the way of the beers she likes are anything above 10% ABV.
My mom has a hard time finding beers that she likes, but when I found her,
she likes her dark bourbon barrel aged stuff.
So if that's around the house, then of course
exactly. But my dad's always kind of brought beer home for me to try, like a very wide range of beer. I think because obviously he travels as much as me, if not more. So I remember even being 15 and him bringing sorghum home from South Africa.
Amazing.
Not touching that ever again. I haven't tried it since.
Tasty. Okay.
But yeah.
So it's an alternative. It's common in gluten-free beers now.
Yeah,
this alternative grain that's gluten-free.
But it's essentially just like, it just tastes like
taste very
nice for me. Like imagine you're just drinking that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was always stuff around the house. I don't really have any that come to mind that's like, this is the beer that got me into craft beer that some people have, that they go, oh, I remember I had a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale at home and it blew my mind. Yeah. And for me, in all honesty, it was just...
It's like by immersion almost that you'd always been around
I just enjoyed it. There's been beers, I think, especially when I was younger, I was like, ooh, this is really good. I remember when I started drinking Belgian beer, that was a big eye-opener for me.
Yeah,
and
it's just so different.
Yeah, it's so different. Else. I remember my second week on the job, we went to the Belgian Beer Festival, Brussels Beer Festival.
Okay.
And that was just like incredible.
Yeah, right. You've got all these sour beers. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think especially like I hadn't had anything like that, sour beers and loads of different. So I'd never like heard of a lambic or goose or anything like that. Yeah. But that was like, what?
What? This is beer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was so much stuff that I had that was like, this is beer, really?
And I know, so you mentioned both you and your dad both really like the beer side of the business. Do you have expertise in wine and cider and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, so I handle pretty much all our other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm looking to grow it, but I think the beneficial thing is there's so much crossover that I didn't realise from handling it, it's a lot of the same flavours across food and beverage. It's just slightly different origins. That's really the kind of only difference.
Or different sort of expected presence.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like you really have to learn like a huge range of compounds that's like completely different. It's just like a time and place, to be honest.
Yeah, I did want to ask that if there have been any lessons that you've brought back from sort of
there's been some stuff. I mean, especially in like wine that I think has been really interesting. So we have worked with a couple like wine schools and wine programs and stuff like that, and there's a compound, I won't bore you with the name. There's essentially...
Oh, go ahead, bore me, come on.
It's 2-isopropyl 3-methoxypyrazine, bit of a mouthful, yeah.
Okay, no idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an earthy green pepper note. So it smells like a bell pepper or like habanero or... Yeah, that kind of thing. But we're very sensitive to it as humans. In the wine industry, it's a really important compound in red wine. So like Cabernet Sauvignons and stuff like that. It's what makes the best-selling red wines in the world. It is that.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's usually that. It's very, very important. But people have realised recently that it's actually from click beetles, basically pooing on the grapes.
Wow.
And maybe getting crushed a bit. They haven't really kind of worked out specifically what, because obviously when it's that, there's probably a few have got in.
Yeah.
And it's that as well.
What?
But the thing me and my dad say is we find it in hoppy beers all the time. of course, click beetles will be on hops, as
well.
well.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone's done a study
research into that
at all.
Yeah.
That for me, I'm like, it surely must be a similar origin.
Yeah.
That I find it all the time. So I think there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot we can learn from different industries where, particularly in the beer industry, it's done quite a lot where people go, oh, we don't know this and it's never been done before, when it has, but it's just been done in something else. Yeah.
Just
doing a bit of research. Yeah.
How much of the company's time is spent doing research on things like this?
We're quite a geeky company in the way that if we don't know it, we want to find it out. Yeah. So I think we have around 400 compounds in our essentially database that we could make, that a lot have come from really random stuff like troubleshooting for food or beverage companies that has been like, we don't know what this is.
So let's
so try and find it out, that you can kind of narrow it down, or maybe it's like an off flavor or an ester or a sulfur, but if we don't know what it is and we try and find out, there's still a lot out there that we don't know in terms of like us as a company and the beer industry. But I think we've got...
That's what makes the job so interesting.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of it nailed, I think. Yeah. Which is good. Or like a good area to look from.
What are, of course, so the sensory side of things is important to make sure the beer is tasting good. But in terms of the flavors that are making beer sell, like for example, with that wine example, are there certain hop compounds that you're finding that if that's in a beer, that's what people think is a great hop beer?
I think there's a few. There's a lot that I think people call, I hate this term, but you'll probably be very familiar with it, the stone fruit characters.
Yes.
Yeah, it pains me because what is a stone fruit? Like, there's so many different
Because I always think of like
I think it's a terrible
peach
descriptor.
and nectarine, but it also includes cherry in
Yeah,
that family.
I think it's a terrible
so
descriptor.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a hot thing. But there's a few around that area that I think are really driving the best selling craft beers, but it depends what you like. So there's like 3-mercaptohexanol, that's essentially like your passion fruit, like all of these, that they're all hop derived.
Yep.
But then you've got like wet hop beers, which will be really high in myrcene, that there's loads of different stuff. So it
what does that taste like to us? How do we perceive myrcene?
So myrcene is, if you've ever rubbed and smelt hops, it smells it is myrcene. Basically, it smells exactly like that. It's the main compound in hop oil, but for people who might not be familiar with it, it smells like tomato plants, kind of pesto-y, like anything greeny. Do you know what I mean? Like around.
When you buy tomatoes on the vine and you just smell the vine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that.
Smells exactly like that.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do that sometimes now when I buy tomatoes. I'm like, it smells like beer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does.
It's all good practice.
Yeah,
so.
it is. Probably looking at you in the shop a bit weird.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
Yeah.
So you are rhyming off all of these chemical terms like nobody's business, but you studied politics and
shows anyone can learn it. I mean, I know some brewery panels where their best tasters work in HR and accounts and stuff like that. And anyone can learn.
It's a different type of skill.
Yeah.
So how did you go from, your uni work to then realizing it wasn't for you in politics? And then how did you pick up all of the scientific knowledge you have now? Again, is that also that bit of osmosis from your family as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's weird because I almost don't see it as scientific, but I guess it is, and I've fallen into a scientific role.
Yeah, totally.
which is really odd. I think in the beginning, when we do beer training courses, we use the chemical name beer industry descriptor, basically. But we have done others where we have a in-house taste panel that's around 30 people, but basically we pulled that from Surrey around like those different people who were local to the area. So they might like be retired or they run a knitting club or do stuff like that. And we screen like 200 people and whittled it down to 30.
They're all different backgrounds.
Yeah, it took a long time, but a lot of them, to be honest, ended up being kind of like 50, 60-year-old kind of nice ladies who are home and coming, but they're really, really good.
Is it true that women are better than men?
It is.
I have heard this.
It is.
At taste perception and sensory
We
perception.
have about 2 million data points on a validation scheme that we run for like multinationals.
Holy moly.
Yeah, my dad wrote an article a couple of years ago for the Wall Street Journal, and it was literally every single one we went through. Women are better on average around 3%.
Wow. Okay.
We don't really know why. It could be like a muscle memory thing rather than like an actual ability to taste, or it could go.
Difference.
Yeah, it could be a biological difference that goes back to like hunting, like pre-nature days, because that's where a lot of sense of smell and stuff like that comes from. Is it comes from staying alive or finding a partner. It's one or the other.
So strange.
So you have to think of it like that
Okay.
it could come from that. But on average, women it's more, they can both be trained to an extent, but the more you train them, the women will get slightly better, around 3% over time.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so fascinating.
Yeah, I know. But in terms of how I learned it, I guess all our beer training courses we run, we use the descriptor, and it's kind of, we teach people by repetition. So it's doing it again and again and again and again.
And that's you then.
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
It again and again.
So exactly. So it gets stuck in your head, and then you talk about it every day, and you use it every day. That it becomes second nature. I think just becomes a normal thing. Whereas that's the same thing, I guess, for people who work in the beer industry when they're talking about lots
You've
of
brought
different
into your
stuff.
vocabulary, and it becomes normal to speak.
Yeah, but in terms of like beer and brewing knowledge, I had to learn that. I taught that all myself. At one point, I thought about going back to university and doing like a master's and a degree and all that, and then went nah, and kind of learn it as I went along. To be honest,
Well, you decided to immerse yourself in that as well.
Exactly.
Doing your recent brewing internship.
Yeah.
So is that where the interest came about, really?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of part of it. I've been meaning to
hands-on
do it for a couple years. I mean, I spend a lot of my job teaching breweries where flavors come from, and also having a taste panel is as a troubleshooting exercise. That if you have a flavor issue, you know its origin, you know whether it's coming from having a poor boil, or maybe you had a stuck mash, or you had this, or someone didn't add the right yeast, like the simple things. That I spend my day-to-day talking to people about that, rather than actually have I homebrewed, but have I actually like brewed on a system and done it myself. That I think it was getting a bit of that experience and saying, okay, I know this in real life now.
Yeah. And what was that experience like?
It was great. I mean, it was tiring, and
giving you a
brewing
whole
is not
beer.
brewing is not glamorous work. I knew that in the beginning, but it's very different. It's also around like 40 degrees in Charlotte, probably near like 45 in the brewery. It's it's like being in a sauna.
Toasty.
Yeah, with like one fan that works on a 5-vessel manual system. Right. So it was kind of learning at the deep end.
Hot, vessels.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way to stay cool.
Went out and hung with a couple of friends who work at a brewery the other day, and even they had like a semi-automatic system, and I was like, this is amazing. Going from one to another is like completely different. Yeah, but I've been meaning to do it for a while. It's just one of those things that it's just trying to find the time to actually do it.
Take a break from life. So how long were you there in total?
6 weeks.
Yeah. And were you then doing every aspect of production, packaging?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of picked the brewery that I did. There are a couple others that I reached out to who were kind of on a much larger scale, kind of like 100-barrel size, so it's a bit different.
Huge difference.
Exactly. So the one I was working in was 20-barrel. That I've got barrels in my head now. I was trying to convert it back to the UK. Yeah. That part of it is they only have basically like 7-8 people in production, so everyone kind of does everything. Like everyone is really like brewing, cellaring, packaging.
Wow.
Like everything. Split between people. So that was the benefit of that you can do a bit of everything, rather than you might go to a larger brewery and I'll spend 2 months in a cellar. Do you know what I mean? Doing that. Yeah. Or I'll learn how to CIP for 2 months. That I got to do literally everything, which was great. And recipe development, send off beers for Great American Beer Festival. We did all of that. We did bottle conditioning.
That's quite cool.
Like a massive range of stuff.
Does that make you want to go down the brewing route eventually, or was that to better help in the role that you're in currently, to make sure you understand the process?
I'm not sure at the moment, to be honest. It's something I'd definitely like to continue and do again, but it might be that I do similar next year or something and do it somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. That I'm not sure at the moment. It's just trying to keep it up and
keep learning.
Yeah, keep learning, keep doing stuff, and see how I get on.
And initially you said you were trying to, do some seasonal work so you could make your way back to politics. Any interest in ever returning back to that space? I think
they always say the beer industry sucks you in, that once you're in, you never leave. That I think, to be honest, it is probably much more likely here. I mean, the beer industry is just incredible. I think anyone who works in that knows it. That it's not just that you love the beer; it's that your closest friends are here, and everything like that makes it so enjoyable, and everyone is so friendly and welcoming, and I'd say it's only like a 0.01% situation that there's a bad thing that happens in the beer industry. I think on the whole it's very positive, friendly, very welcoming industry.
Well, you took my last question out of my
mouth. Sorry.
I always ask that one. Is there anything else you want to add about why you enjoy being a part of the beer industry?
Yeah, I think mostly that. I mean, if there's anyone who deliberates about joining, I always say do it straight away. I mean, I work mostly on production side, so I can speak mostly for that compared to like the distribution side and stuff like that. But everyone I know is always happy to share knowledge. I'm lucky in my role that I get to work with both craft breweries and multinationals compared to other people, but most people I know would be happy to talk to anyone about what they do and share advice, stories, share a beer, whatever it may be. That everyone's very approachable. So.
And I do think your role is quite unique in that sense. It almost seems quite behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
People don't think of sensory panels right away as a really integral part of the
beer industry.
I've
got to see the really like grubby dirty laundry in breweries, for sure. I mean, the almost the bad thing about my role is when I go to a brewery is they rarely offer me the nice beer. They offer me the one riddled with problems, and say, what's wrong with this? It's like, can I have the nice one first?
But it hasn't turned you off beer.
No, it hasn't.
So whatever you're doing, you're enjoying it. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Keeps me busy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks so much for your time, Cara. I think Cara's story is a great testament to the fact that you don't need to have a science background to succeed in a technical career in beer. So, if you ever thought that counted you out, think again. Next week, come on back to hear from brewer and social media consultant Megan Stone, aka Is Beer a Carb on Instagram. Chat soon.